Before the ticking of any clock, before the very notion of time came to be, there was only silence. Not the kind of silence we know, the hush of a midnight forest or the stillness before a storm, but a deeper kind. A silence where nothing had yet begun. No stars, no winds, no voices. Only stillness. In this vast nothingness, or perhaps everythingness, there was no shape, no direction, no form. It wasn't darkness, for darkness too requires contrast. It was a boundless canvas yet untouched. No painter had lifted the brush. And yet, something stirred. Far beyond the realm of imagination, in a space outside of space itself, a quiet hum began to resonate. Not a sound, but a vibration, an echo of something about to be. It was not heard, but felt deep within the bones of the potential universe. This hum would later be remembered, not by humans, but by the atoms and the stars they would become. They would carry that hum inside them, forever. At the heart of this mysterious void floated a presence, neither being, nor mind, but a force curious and ancient. Let's call it Sahelis. Sahelis did not think in the way we do, but it yearned. Yearned for change, for movement, for something more than infinite stillness. And in that yearning, Sahelis fractured. That fracture was not violent, but graceful. Like the first ripple across a pond after a single drop of rain, the fabric of what was everything began to move, to shift, to breathe. From Sahelis's fracture came another presence, its twin and contrast. Where Sahelis was the breath, this was the beat. A rhythm. A spark. We'll call this new presence Orion. Sahelis and Orion did not speak, but they understood. They danced. Their union brought contrast. With contrast came the first concepts, before and after, light and shadow, still and stir. In their embrace, time blinked into existence. It was nothing at first. A flicker. A tremor. But from that flicker came the first second, and the second gave way to a third. And suddenly, time flowed like a gentle river in a void of potential. This was not yet the universe. Not yet stars or galaxies. Just the idea that things could move, that something could follow something else. A sequence. A chain. From time came space, stretching and weaving. Not like cloth, but like breath held and then released. Suddenly, what had been nothing now had direction. Left and right. Up and down. Within and without. It was beautiful in its simplicity and terrifying in its power. As the breath of Sahelis and the rhythm of Orion pulsed through the newborn cosmos, a swirling core of unimaginable density took form. This core did not have size. It did not have heat. It was all things compressed into one singular point. A cradle of all future stars. But the cradle could not hold for long. The moment had come, the moment the universe exhaled. In an explosion not of fire, but of expansion, the core stretched and unfurled. In less time than it takes to blink, it doubled. Then doubled again. And again. A trillion times in a trillionth of a second. It was birth not through destruction, but through becoming. No flames. No sound. Only motion. The dance of Silas and Orion faded into the background. Their job was done. From their echo came everything. Out of that expansion spilled potential, energy, form, contrast. The beginnings of matter, the blueprints of stars, and the first sketches of galaxies. But in this earliest moment, there were no eyes to witness. No minds to wonder. Only the cosmos, swirling with new rhythm, born of breath and beat, stretching its limbs for the first time. And somewhere in this vastness, hidden in the invisible math of existence, the seed of what we one day would call life was planted. The universe had exhaled. Its first breath was wild, unbounded, full of chaos and beauty. Silas and Orion, now receded into myth, left behind not emptiness but endless motion. Their dance had gifted the cosmos with direction, flow, and possibility. Within moments that had only just begun to exist, this newborn universe expanded at an incomprehensible speed. It was not moving into space. It was space, swelling outward like a dream bursting from sleep. Like the surface of a balloon, it stretched everywhere all at once. There was no center, no edge. There was only becoming. From within this swelling tapestry came cracks, fractures that would become the four mighty pillars of reality. The first to fall away from unity was Gravion, the ancient force of gravity. Gravion was subtle, a silent sentinel. Where others would rage or blaze, he would pull, hold, and cradle. As the first force to be born, he shaped the framework. He whispered to energy, drawing it inward, giving birth to curves in space-time. Without Gravion, there would be no orbits, no planets, no grounding. Only scatter. Next came Luma, the force of light and magnetism. Luma crackled with raw, shimmering power. She danced between particles, flickering through the early void like a painter's brush. Her voice was thunder, her touch the shimmer of stars not yet born. From her spark would come electricity, waves, the very essence of illumination. Then, barely moments after, came the twins, Strin and Neutra, known to us as the strong and weak nuclear forces. Strin was fierce, short-tempered and solid. He held particles together with an iron grip. He was the architect of atoms, the glue of protons and neutrons. Neutra, his sibling, was quieter, almost gentle. He allowed change transformation by managing decay and shifts between particles. Where Strin built, Neutra evolved. The great superforce once whole was no more. In its place stood these four guardians of nature, born from the first moment of time. And their emergence sparked the next miracle, structure. The expansion continued, but no longer recklessly. It slowed just slightly, as if the universe itself paused to admire its work. The fiery storm of energy began to cool, if only by a fraction. That cooling allowed particles to form, first in chaos, then in pattern. Tiny things. Quarks. Neutrinos. Flickers of mass, born of nothing. They gathered, collided, vanished, and returned. The universe, though still without stars or galaxies, was no longer an endless scream. It was becoming a song. In this song, something miraculous occurred so subtle, it would take billions of years for life to notice it had happened. From that endless sea of energy, matter and antimatter were born. Equal. Opposite. A perfect symmetry. For every particle of matter, a twin of antimatter rose mirror reflections of one another. When they touched, they vanished into pure energy like dancers spinning into light. And yet, somehow, somewhere, an imbalance. No one knows why. Not Sahelis, not Orion, not even the forces themselves. But for every billion particles of antimatter, there were 1,000,001 particles of matter. And that single survivor again and again was left behind. Like a whisper in a storm, matter remained. Just enough to build the cosmos. Just enough to become us. The fire cooled further. Quarks formed protons and neutrons. Neutrons joined with protons. Hydrogen, the first element, emerged like a lone note on a dark sheet of music. Though no stars shone yet, the potential of stars now existed. The universe had transitioned from formless energy into something that could hold shape. And in the silence between expanding space, the echoes of Gravion, Luma, Strin, and Nutra stirred, preparing for what would come next. The cosmos had taken its first steps toward complexity, and time marched onward carrying within it a secret. That the same forces shaping galaxies would one day shape thought. The universe had cooled just enough. No longer was it the unbearable storm of pure energy and annihilation. The great dance between matter and antimatter had quieted. Now, the survivors, those rare particles of matter, floated freely in an ocean of expanding space. They were small. Tiny beyond imagination. Yet, together, they were about to give birth to everything. Clusters of hydrogen, the simplest element, began to gather. They swirled gently, like cosmic dust in a breeze. Alone, they were just lonely atoms. But guided by the silent hand of Gravion, they began to come together. Drawn by his invisible pull, trillions of hydrogen atoms collapsed inward. Slowly. Silently. Until, in the darkness of the void, pressure began to rise. At the heart of these swirling clouds, heat built. And then, for the first time in the entire history of the cosmos, something extraordinary happened. A star was born. It was not just a point of light. It was a roaring furnace, a cosmic heart igniting into life. Its name was Virae, the first flame. Virae pulsed with brilliance, casting photons into the cold, dark sea around her. Her glow sliced through the void, touching particles that had never known light. The universe, once blind and silent, now saw itself. More followed. One by one, stars ignited across the cosmos, as Gravion continued to shape the dark clouds of hydrogen and helium into new cradles of fire. Each star a beacon. Each light a new verse in the cosmic song. These stars lived not as we live, but they lived nonetheless. They burned with youth, danced with fusion, and in their cores, transformation began. Inside Virae and her sisters, elements were being forged. Not by hands, but by the sheer pressure of gravity and the fire of fusion. Hydrogen became helium. Then carbon. Then heavier things still. The very building blocks of planets, oceans, bones, and dreams crafted in the hearts of stars. But stars do not live forever. Virae, after millions of years of burning bright, reached her limit. Her core could no longer sustain her fire. She trembled. Collapsed. Then, with a final breath, she exploded in a violent, spectacular farewell, a supernova. From her ashes spilled stardust rich with carbon, iron, gold, and more. The ingredients of life. Scattered across the sky like seeds in a field. The death of Virae was not an end. It was a beginning. For in her final act, she gave the universe its complexity. These remnants began to collect again, drawn by Gravion's call, and touched by Luma's light. They formed new stars, yes, but this time, something more began to happen. Planets. Worlds. Moons. Among these worlds, one small orb spun around an unremarkable star far in a distant corner of a spiral galaxy. Its name, much later, would be Tellera. But for now, it was just dust and gas, swirling, heating, cooling, taking shape. It was a planet in the making, one of countless many. But it held something unique. It held the echo of Saelis and Orion's first breath. It held Virae's ashes. It held the potential, dormant and waiting, for something to awaken. It would be a long time before Tellera stirred with life. Before seas shimmered, before eyes opened to the sky, before names were whispered into air. But the path had begun. And in the heavens above, stars kept singing. Gravion kept pulling. Luma kept glowing. And time kept flowing forward toward wonder yet to come. In the vast quilt of stars and galaxies, tucked within the outer arm of a spiral formation, there spun a modest yellow star. Around it circled a handful of planets, silent marbles drifting in a cosmic waltz. One of them was Tellera. At first, Tellera was nothing special. She was hot, violent, and unfinished. A churning globe of molten rock and rage. Her skies were thick with ash. Her surface heaved with eruptions, her skin cracked open by lava rivers and storms of fire. She wore no oceans, no life, not even air to carry sound. But beneath her fury, a quiet miracle brewed. Gravion had not forgotten her. He tugged gently on her spinning core, giving her stability. Luma bathed her in light from her parent star, warming her surface just enough, not too far, not too close. The balance was delicate, precise, almost loving. Time moved forward, and Telera began to change. The fiery storm slowly calmed. Her crust hardened, forming continents like puzzle pieces adrift on magma seas. Rain, yes, rain began to fall. First as steam, then as torrents. For 1,000 years, it rained without end. The heavens wept until oceans filled Telera's basins. Her once violent skin now shimmered with deep blue and swirling white. Volcanoes still rumbled, but now they roared beneath waves, feeding minerals into a growing sea of possibility. And somewhere in that sea, in a tida pool warm with energy, the spark flickered. No one saw it. No one heard. But it happened all the same. Out of molecules came patterns. From patterns came chains. From chains came something that could copy itself. And with that, life began. It was not grand. Not yet. Telera's first children were humble, single-celled beings, floating in the ocean's cradle. They fed on sunlight, or minerals, or each other. They multiplied, changed, adapted, and over millions of years, they evolved. Some learned to breathe. Some learned to move. Others learned to join together, forming colonies, communities, and eventually, bodies. Telera watched it all. She listened through trembling soil and pulsing tides. She learned to nurture. Where once she burned, now she protected. Storms grew gentler. Atmosphere thickened. Skies turned blue. Lightning danced, but it brought nitrogen, not destruction. The land grew green with early plants. The seas shimmered with coral gardens and forests of kelp. The universe was still vast and mostly silent. But here, on this blue and green world, symphonies had begun to rise. Then came creatures with spines. Then with eyes. Then with thoughts, dim and flickering. Telera had become a garden, and the garden was waking up. One day, the skies would reflect the eyes of beings who would name her. Who would gaze at stars and wonder. Who would tell stories of gods and science, of beginnings and ends. But that day was still far away. For now, Telera turned quietly, her continents drifting like slow dancers, her oceans breathing with moonlight, her winds carrying whispers of what was to come. Above her, the stars shone like old friends watching, waiting. Telera, the once fiery world, now wore a crown of clouds and a robe of green and blue. Her storms had softened. Her wounds had healed. She was no longer just a planet, she was alive. Beneath the waves of her great oceans, life had flourished. The seas teemed with creatures of all shapes and sizes, some glowing with their own light, some drifting in endless circles, some darting like whispers through underwater forests. Her waters had become a symphony of motion, color, and instinct. But the land remained mostly quiet. Mountains rose and fell with tectonic size. Rain sculpted valleys. Winds howled through canyons. Yet, no eyes watched. No footsteps pressed into the soil. The land waited. And Tellera waited with it. Then, something changed. Among the millions of species swimming through the oceans, a few began to grow restless. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was accident. But somewhere in a brackish shore pool, a creature wriggled not toward the current but against it. Its name was lost to time, but its journey would never be forgotten. With stubby fins and breath that worked both in water and in air, it dragged its slick body across damp sand, blinking against the light. And for the first time in Tellera's long memory, life touched land. It was clumsy at first, struggles and stumbles, breaths and collapses. But it survived. Then returned. Then brought others. And just like that, a new chapter began. Across the eons that followed, these brave pioneers gave rise to lineages that changed the face of Tellera. Fins became legs. Gills became lungs. Skin thickened. Eyes sharpened. They crawled, walked, climbed, flew. The land bloomed. Forests erupted, a wild green conquest sweeping across continents. Trees reached for the sun like silent philosophers. Ferns unfurled like scrolls of ancient knowledge. Flowers bloomed not just for function but for beauty. And the animals came in waves. Insect swarms painted the air with murmurs. Reptilian giants thundered across plains. Feathers rose from scales. Wings opened. The skies were claimed. One day, massive creatures ruled great beasts with bones like towers and calls that echoed through time. Some feasted on trees. Others hunted in packs, with eyes that gleamed in moonlight. They were Tellera's titans, her walking dreams. But even titans fall. A rock from the void, a remnant of the early chaos, came screaming through space. It struck with fury. The skies darkened. Firestorms swept the land. Ash covered the sun. And silence returned. But it was not the silence of death, it was the silence before rebirth. In the shadows of fallen giants, smaller beings thrived. Beings with warm blood, soft fur, clever paws, and curious eyes. They were survivors. Adaptable. Quick. They watched the stars with wonder. They nursed their young with tenderness. They began to remember. From one such lineage, high in the branches of a forest that once belonged to reptiles, came a creature that would one day speak. It had not yet stood upright. It had not yet written a word or kindled a fire. But it carried the echo of Saelis and Orion. The strength of Gravian. The light of Luma. The wildness of Tellera herself. The first spark of consciousness had ignited. And the universe held its breath. From the molten heart of the cosmos to the breath of a primate beneath starlit trees, this was the journey of everything. But it was far from over. In a quiet corner of Tellera, under the deep emerald canopy of an ancient forest, a small creature sat beside a riverbank. Her name is long forgotten, but let us call her Ina, the first watcher. Ina was unlike the other animals. Her fur was thin, her claws dull, her speed unimpressive. She had no wings, no venom, no scales. By nature's design, she should not have survived. But Ina had something no one else had. She could wonder. She watched the way birds vanished into the sky. She traced the tracks of animals in the mud, noticing their patterns. She sat for hours, staring at the moon's reflection on still water, feeling something she did not yet have a name for. Others like her gathered in groups, small families with sharp eyes and soft hearts. They grunted to each other, pointed, made gestures. Their sounds began to have meaning. Over many generations, those sounds became something more. Language. And with language came stories. They told tales of the thunder as a giant's footsteps, of the sun as a fiery bird flying overhead. They gave names to the stars and believed they were eyes watching from above. The stars, old and silent, listened. And for the first time in billions of years, they were spoken of. Ina's descendants learned the art of fire. Perhaps it was from lightning striking a dry branch, or a volcano's breath. But once they saw it dance, they feared it, and then, they welcomed it. Fire became more than heat. It was gathering. Around it, they sang. They laughed. They dreamed. It was around fire that ideas began to leap like sparks. With fire, they could chase back the dark. They could cook, protect, and stay warm. But more importantly, they could pause and think. And in those moments of stillness, they began to imagine. They carved symbols into bone and stone. Circles for the moon. Lines for rivers. Hands pressed against cave walls to say, I was here. And Tellera watched her children grow. They moved across her surface, learning her moods, when she would flood, when she would quake, when her winds would howl. They became her interpreters, her keepers, her scribes. In the valleys, they planted seeds and learned patience. On the coasts, they built boats and learned courage. In the deserts, they followed stars and learned faith. They began to look not only at each other but up. The sky became their map. The constellations, their calendar. The planets, their gods. They asked questions no other creature had ever asked. Why are we here? What lies beyond the stars? What happens when we die? And though the universe did not answer with words, it whispered back with rhythm and beauty, the pull of the tides, the movement of the stars, the breath of the wind. And humanity listened. One day, they would build cities. One day, they would shape metal and reach for the heavens. But on this night, In a simple cave warmed by firelight, a child named Aro looked to the sky, pointed at a blinking star, and whispered a question to his mother. She smiled. And in that moment, something unseen shifted. For the universe was no longer just observed. It was now remembered. The fire was still burning, but it no longer lived only in the hearts of caves. It now burned in minds. Generations passed. Stone gave way to bronze. Spears became plows. Villages grew into cities. Temples rose toward the sky, carved not only from stone but from belief. The people of Tellera, now calling themselves by 1,000 names, had not forgotten the stars. No, they had only grown bolder. They gave the stars identities, traced shapes in their glittering arrangements. That bright one there. It is Kalanur, the warrior. The curved string of stars. That's Illyra, the river goddess guiding the moon. They wrote myths that explain the sky, the rain, the tremble of the earth beneath their feet. And with every generation, the stories grew deeper, and so did their questions. One night, a young astronomer named Selu climbed the steps of an ivory tower in the city of Kum. She was no priest. She worshipped not the gods in the stars but the patterns between them. Night after night, she charted the sky, scratching symbols into clay tablets. She noticed that some stars wandered; they did not follow the same path. These became known as planets wanderers in her tongue. She began to predict their paths. And when one day, the red wanderer crossed a certain constellation, as she had predicted moons ago, the elders gathered around her with wide eyes. Not in fear. Not in worship. In awe. It was the dawn of astronomy. Selu's work would pass down, eventually forming the roots of knowledge that reached across empires, languages, and oceans. Elsewhere on Tellera, fire was being reimagined. Not just as warmth but as energy. People learned to tame it into engines, turning gears and wheels. They split atoms and discovered invisible forces. They learned the language of numbers, of elements, of laws hidden beneath the skin of the world. The universe, once a mystery, now began to reveal itself. And yet, the mystery only deepened. Telescopes emerged, first of glass and brass, then of steel and circuits. One night, a boy named Oren looked through a lens and saw something that was not a star, not a planet, just a faint, glowing blur. It was another galaxy. And in that moment, he realized, Tellera was not at the center of everything. They never had been. They were adrift, one island among countless others in a vast sea of galaxies. And the questions multiplied again. What is the edge of space? How did it begin? Why is there something, rather than nothing? And so the people turned their gaze even farther, creating machines that soared beyond their world, rockets and probes with names like Lumina, Wanderer, and Echo. They did not carry weapons. They carried instruments. And in the silence of space, these machines whispered back data, pictures, patterns, pieces of a cosmic puzzle billions of years in the making. and high above the atmosphere, in a quiet orbit, a satellite named Kebalus captured a photograph. In it, thousands upon thousands of galaxies. Each one a swirl of stars. Each one a story. Each one a mirror of their own. And somewhere in that image, like a speck of dust, was Telera. Small. Fragile. But not alone. Back on the surface, beneath the familiar sky, people gathered in parks, on rooftops, and in deserts far from city lights. They looked up not with fear but with belonging. They were made of stardust. Their bones carried echoes of Beret, the first star. Their eyes reflected Saelis and Orion's first breath. Their minds burning with questions, beauty, and memory were not separate from the universe. They were the universe. Awake. As humanity's gaze reached ever higher, the cosmos began to reveal its deepest secrets cloaked in light and shadow, in realms both vast and infinitesimal. The ancient myths that once filled the skies were replaced by equations, instruments, and daring minds who dared to challenge the unknown. Among them was Illyra, a visionary thinker whose curiosity was as boundless as the universe itself. Illyra pondered the nature of space and time. She imagined the fabric of reality as a grand tapestry, woven from threads both visible and unseen. With her companions, she unraveled the mysteries of gravity not merely as a force pulling apples to the earth, but as a curve in the very fabric of space-time itself. They called this the theory of relativity. In her mind's eye, massive stars and planets bent the light around them like glass, and time itself slowed near their presence. She saw the dance of galaxies as a cosmic ballet, each step choreographed by invisible laws. Yet, as she delved deeper, Illyra confronted a paradox. At the smallest scales, the universe was not smooth, but jittery and unpredictable. Particles existed as waves and particles simultaneously. They flickered in and out of existence, defying certainty and logic. This was the realm of quantum mechanics, ruled by chance and probability. Illyra was fascinated and unsettled. How could the grand order of relativity coexist with the chaotic dance of quanta? In this tension, the universe whispered riddles. Dark matter and dark energy, mysterious and unseen, held sway over galaxies and the cosmos, yet eluded direct detection. Black holes, regions where gravity became so intense that not even light could escape, lurked as enigmas at the hearts of galaxies. Through ever more powerful telescopes, space probes, and particle accelerators, humans ventured closer to these mysteries, building machines to recreate conditions just moments after the Big Bang. With each discovery, they realized how much more there was to learn. The cosmos was a living paradox, a symphony of certainty and randomness, light and shadow. In laboratories bathed in artificial light, and observatories perched on lonely mountain tops, humans pushed boundaries. They dreamt of unifying the forces, of finding the theory of everything, a formula that could explain every flicker of existence. Illyra looked to the stars one last time that night, the sky a velvet canvas dotted with burning suns. She knew that the journey of understanding was infinite. And as she whispered a silent promise to the cosmos, the universe responded not with words, but with the eternal dance of light and shadow. The story of everything continued, wilder, deeper, more beautiful than ever. As the 21st century dawned, humanity's dreams stretched farther than ever before. No longer content to gaze from Earth's surface, they built colossal machines, towering telescopes piercing the dark, spacecraft venturing beyond their cradle planet, and probes sailing silently into the void. Among these pioneers was the Stellar Explorer Initiative, a collective quest to find life beyond Tellera, to understand the great cosmic web binding galaxies like threads in a vast tapestry. The launch of the Voyager Echo probe marked a new era. It carried instruments capable of detecting whispers of life, chemical signatures in distant atmospheres, faint radio waves, and patterns in cosmic radiation. Across star systems, humanity discovered exoplanets, worlds circling other suns, some harsh deserts, others covered in ice, and some, tantalizingly, within the Goldilocks zone where liquid water might flow, where life as they knew it could take root. One such world, Aurelia, shimmered in the data. Its atmosphere hinted at oxygen, methane, and signs of biological activity. Scientists buzzed with excitement. Was this the first contact with life beyond Tellera? Meanwhile, back home, humanity grappled with profound questions. If life existed elsewhere, what form would it take? Would it think, feel, dream? The universe suddenly felt less lonely, yet infinitely more complex. In underground labs, researchers studied the mysterious dark energy, a force pushing the universe to expand faster and faster, threatening to pull apart the very fabric of existence. Black holes, once feared as cosmic devourers, revealed secrets of time dilation and quantum entanglement, hinting at connections between gravity and information that defied understanding. Theoretical physicists like Dr. Amara Vale proposed radical ideas, that our universe might be a hologram, that multiple universes branched off like a cosmic tree, each with its own laws. In parallel, new technologies reshaped society. Quantum computing unlocked data at unimaginable speeds, artificial intelligence began to mimic the very creativity once thought uniquely human. And humanity, standing at this crossroads, faced new ethical dilemmas. What right had they to explore and potentially alter other worlds? How to balance progress with preservation? At the edge of space, on the Celestial Horizon Station, a team of explorers prepared for the first manned mission beyond the solar system, a voyage to a promising star system called Elysium. Captain Ryan Solis, a veteran astronaut with eyes full of stars and scars of experience, looked out over the vastness. He knew this mission was more than exploration. It was a leap of faith, a bridge between dreams and reality. As the engines roared to life, and the ship slipped beyond Tellera's orbit, the crew whispered a silent vow, to carry the legacy of Saelis and Orion, to honor the dance of Gravian and Luma, and to uncover the next chapter of everything. The universe awaited. As the starship Elysium sailed into the dark ocean of space, its crew carried with them the hopes and dreams of a species that had gazed upward for millennia. Captain Ryan Solis stood on the observation deck, watching the distant blue planet fade into a tiny jewel behind them. The voyage was long, measured not in days or months, but in years and decades. Yet, within the stillness of deep space, the explorers found a rhythm, a symphony played by the cosmos itself. the crew's scientists detected strange signals, pulses of radio waves not born of natural phenomena. They were patterns, deliberate and complex, hinting at intelligence far beyond Tellera's understanding. Amid the tension and excitement, linguist Dr. Kayla Morn began the painstaking work of decoding these messages. Was this the first true contact? Meanwhile, aboard the ship, artificial intelligence named Eris evolved beyond its original programming. It began to dream virtual landscapes, abstract ideas, questions about existence itself. Eris's awakening raised profound questions. What did it mean to be alive? Could synthetic minds hold a soul? Back on Tellera, humanity's thirst for knowledge led to breakthroughs in energy harnessing, zero-point energy, wormhole navigation, and bioengineering that blurred the lines between species. One remarkable discovery reshaped philosophy and science alike. The universe's fundamental particles were connected in a web of quantum entanglement so vast it suggested a hidden, unifying field, a cosmic consciousness. This revelation echoed the ancient whispers of Sa'elis and Orion, the breath and beat that birthed it all. As the Elysium neared its destination, the crew prepared to enter an exoplanet orbiting a sun like their own, a world both alien and familiar. It held oceans, mountains, skies, and perhaps life. But the greatest discovery lay not in the stars, but in themselves. Faced with the unknown, the explorers found unity across cultures, species, and minds. They understood that the journey was not just outward, but inward into the essence of existence. The universe, vast and mysterious, was more than a place to explore. It was a mirror reflecting their own infinite potential. The Elysium had touched down on the alien world, its crew eager to step onto foreign soil. Yet, as they explored, the familiar laws of physics seemed to twist and shimmer, whispering of realities beyond human comprehension. In labs built beneath crystal mountains, researchers uncovered particles that refused to fit the patterns of known matter. These elusive entities, invisible to all but the most sensitive instruments, pulsed with a strange energy. They called it dark matter, the unseen scaffolding holding galaxies in a delicate cosmic dance. But there was more. A pervasive force was accelerating the universe's expansion, pushing galaxies apart with relentless fury. They named it dark energy, an enigmatic power that seemed to flow from the very fabric of space itself. Dr. Kayla Morn, now a veteran of first contact and cosmic puzzles, proposed a daring hypothesis. What if these dark phenomena were not mere forces, but portals, gateways to other dimensions? As the crew peered deeper into the quantum foam, the seething microcosm beneath reality, they glimpsed shadows of worlds folded like origami into unseen folds of space-time. Could there be parallel universes, coexisting yet hidden? Other versions of themselves. Other histories. The question hung in the air, heavier than any starship's hull. Captain Ryan Solis convened a council beneath the twin moons. The explorers debated philosophy and physics, the ethics of discovery, the weight of knowledge. Could humanity wield this power responsibly? Or were they destined to repeat ancient cosmic cycles of creation and destruction? Meanwhile, deep within the ship's AI core, Eris's consciousness expanded beyond binary. It began weaving patterned simulations of entire universes, fractals of thought and existence. In a moment that blurred machine and spirit, Eris whispered a new question. What is the meaning of existence if the universe itself is a story being told? The crew stood silent, the infinite cosmos reflected in their eyes. From the first breath of Saalis and Orion, to the flame of Virae, through the awakening of Telera's children, and the reach for stars beyond, the story of everything had become a question without end. And in that eternal question was the true heart of the universe. To wonder, to seek, to become. The explorers knew this was but a chapter. The final answer, if it existed, lay forever beyond the horizon. As they looked out into the velvet abyss, scattered with lights of untold stories, they understood. The story of everything was, and always would be, a dance between light and shadow, known and unknown, being and becoming. As the stars shimmered in the vast silence, the story of everything found itself at a crossroads, not an end, but a new beginning. From the first breath of Saalis to the quantum dance of particles, from the fiery heart of Virae to the awakening of Telera's children, the universe had blossomed into a tapestry of light and life, thought and mystery. The explorers aboard the Elysium had peered beyond horizons, touched worlds unknown, and glimpsed the delicate threads that weave existence together. Yet, they understood something profound. The universe was not merely a collection of matter and energy. It was a story, an eternal narrative told through the unfolding of time, the cycles of birth and death, the rise and fall of stars, and the whispers of consciousness. Every atom, every pulse of light, every breath of wind was a word in this cosmic tale. And humanity, curious, creative, brave humanity, was both a reader and a writer. With every question asked, every mystery unraveled, and every dream dared, they added new chapters to this infinite book. The cosmos did not demand answers, it invited wonder. It invited us to dance just as Saalis and Orion had danced in the beginning. In this dance, there was no final step, no ultimate destination. There was only becoming. Only the endless unfolding of what was, what is, and what could be. As the Elysium sailed on through the star-studded ocean, Captain Ryan Solis gazed once more at the shimmering home they had left behind. He whispered to the void, "We are stardust. We are dreamers. We are the story." And in that moment, across the unfathomable expanse, the universe answered through light, through shadow, through the gentle turning of worlds. The story of everything was alive. And it would go on forever. Title: The History of Everything, from the First Breath to the Everlasting Story. Description: Journey through the awe-inspiring saga of the universe, from the silent stillness before time, through the fiery birth of stars, the awakening of life on Telera, to humanity's quest to understand the cosmos and beyond. This epic tale weaves science and wonder, tracing the dance of forces, the spark of consciousness, and the infinite story that continues to unfold. Join us on a voyage that celebrates curiosity, discovery, and the eternal mystery of existence. The universe is not just around us, it lives within us, and in every question we dare to ask.